Today we're going to take a look at Liberty Hangout, which is one of those names. You know how Nazis, the original Nazi party, called themselves the National Socialists? It's one of those. Basically, they like to call themselves by the opposite of what they are. Liberty Hangout likes to put the word liberty in their name when they support anything but. Unless that's the liberty of rich white people to seriously infringe the liberties of all other groups. Kaitlin Bennett is our host here, who apparently shat herself at a party. Now, I don't have any specific evidence for this, but just looking at her, she does look like the sort of person who would. That's just my opinion. Kaitlin Bennett likes to surprise people on the street who hold relatively left-wing views, shove a microphone in their face and generally cause a nuisance of herself. It's the typical thing that right-wingers like to do when they want to try and make it look as though they've got all of the arguments in their favour and other people don't, which is obviously patently ridiculous. But the only way they can manage to make this look sort of like it's kind of happening is by surprising usually young people on the street who are just going about their day and expecting them to pull counter-studies out of their collective bumholes on the spot. And usually, for just random people on the street, they do reasonably well compared to the way that right-wingers tend to do in these situations. The thing is, if she really wanted to understand what the left were thinking on any particular subject, she could just watch many of the videos of BreadTube that are on the internet for free. I'm sure there are sort of Noam Chomsky speeches, maybe Ben Burgess. Just watch The Serfs, Vaush, Zanderhau, there are a bunch. Philosophy Tube. But no, instead of doing that, she'd rather just go and cherry pick random ill-informed people on the street. Because, let's not forget, this is nothing but propaganda.
If you could give me a number of how many unarmed black men were shot and killed by the police last year, what number do you think that would be?
You know what the number should be? It should be 0. So anything bigger than 0 is a problem, right?
It's a dramatic amount because a lot of it probably hasn't even been reported. It's got to be in the thousands. Definitely.
I would imagine we have at least 10 every day, so...
10 every day.
I'd imagine something like that.
What if I told you the total number of unarmed black men that were shot and killed by police last year were 9?
Notice how she very specifically specifies unarmed black men who were shot by the police. This framing on this statistic is incredibly misleading, because I don't think anyone particularly cares about how many unarmed black men were shot by police, in the sense that a far, far more important statistic is how many black people, men or women or children, were killed as a result of police actions. Because think about it, under these specific criteria, the death of George Floyd wouldn't even be included.
Does that statistic shock you?
It does.
Oh yeah, this was their pre-roll. Which obviously they believed would be their strongest point, which is massively, massively misleading, and a clear case of blatant propagandizing, twisting statistics in order to promote a particular agenda.
I think white people experience white privilege today in 2020. And
Absolutely.
Give me some examples.
Here's an example for you. How about living in a country that was built on the backs of slaves, where all the infrastructure, all of the privileges of wealth that white people enjoy, having been forcibly extracted from a particular group of people that weren't white, who have never received reparations for. How about that for some white privilege?
There's definitely been times where, for example, I've been pulled over for a traffic infraction. I was going 95 miles per hour in a 50. I got out of it because I was back when I was a teenager too.
Yeah.
I got out of it because I'm a white girl and I was in a pretty little bikini and
Did they tell you that? We're going to let you go because you're a white girl?
No, they didn't tell me that, but it's pretty obviously when you're trying to get out of it and you're a little crying white girl that's really cute, and they're like, okay, well...
You think highly of yourself, don't you?
I have...
A little insult there, straight to her face. for no good reason. And Kaitlin Bennett just laughs in her face for her saying that she was a cute young girl. I mean, if I was Kaitlin Bennett, I really would keep those sorts of personal insults to a minimum, considering her somewhat embarrassing fecal history. And if you want to get into that sort of thing, this girl here wearing the mask will always be more beautiful than Kaitlin Bennett, because beauty comes from within, and what's inside Kaitlin Bennett, regardless of the packaging, we see before our eyes, is a shriveled old white man, filled with hatred and privilege, who would wrestle an elderly black woman to the floor just to wrench gold teeth out of her head.
I have seen, unfortunately, black people be pulled over for nothing and be prosecuted for, I mean, even like the videos that we're seeing now, people capturing candid reactions of policemen and actually showing, there's no obvious reason. And like, for example, there's another one that I saw, this gentleman, he's a CSI, a person who's in the CSI, he's a CSI agent, and they're trying to arrest him because, oh, you look like a criminal, you look like somebody we're chasing. He's like, no, I'm not, and I promise you I'm not. Don't try to do this right now. And they're trying to bully him into being arrested.
Those are all not bad points. Kind of anecdotally expressed and kind of disorganised in their presentation. But, I mean, what do you expect for someone being surprised on the street? And I think what she's trying to say is that, undeniably, there are some societal expectations, some stereotypes at play here that are systemically perpetuated. And as a result of those, white people and black people are not treated the same. By law enforcement, by the entire legal system, and in other ways, like trying to apply for a loan or become gainfully employed. Now, these things have been studied time and time again, and there's not really any denying that these things are true. And what you'll notice is that Kaitlin Bennett doesn't really address any of those points that this person made, because her worldview is unable to address any of those points, because addressing them would expose the lies and the racism which underlie her perspectives. What she would rather do is pull the conversation back onto her chosen rails in order to continue down her pre-planned dialogue tree. Because what's happening here is she's got a lot of preparation behind her of talking points that she wants to express, and she's trying to present this as if it's a fair exchange with someone who is clearly and obviously completely unprepared. Kaitlin Bennett herself is trying to veer the conversation back onto things that she prepared for, because she herself would be unable to deal with the situation that she's expecting these people to be put through.
So I just want to give you a statistic, and I want to know what your thoughts are, because we're talking about maybe police brutality, Black Lives Matter, that's what this is all surrounding. If you could give me a number of how many unarmed black men were shot and killed.
Yep, completely not addressing the points and just veering the subject off to something completely different. And yes, she is about to just totally repeat the cold open for her show that was already too long, really, and now she's just going to do it again to pad the runtime. I mean, really, are they that hard up for content? Well, in a way, yes, as we'll get to in a second, as to why that might be.
By the police last year, what number do you think that would be? It's a dramatic amount because a lot of it probably hasn't even been reported. So not only, it's an unfathomable number for me to think of at this moment. If you had to place a number on it because of all the stories the media is telling us, what would you think that number is? It's got to be in the thousands. Definitely. I would imagine we have at least 10 every day, so.
So what Kaitlin Bennett is doing here is obvious. She's trying to downplay the amount of black people who are killed by cops. Deliberately, misleadingly so. I mean, she understands the statistics, or at least her researchers do, her team does, just as well as any of us can look them up and see what they mean. But they're relying on their audience not doing that, obviously. That would give the game away. And lucky for them, right-wingers tend not to look into things very deeply, because largely they're not looking for evidence to base their opinions on. They're looking for justifications for their already held opinions, which is a different thing, obviously. But perhaps the more interesting question isn't whether she is deliberately misleading, but why she's deliberately misleading. Why would somebody deliberately downplay the number of black people killed by police officers? Well, it's because they want people to stop complaining about it. And why do they want people to stop complaining about it? Because they want the cops to be able to do it without facing any consequences. So what Kaitlin Bennett is saying to us here, not in so many words, but is nonetheless, through implication, admitting that she thinks cops killing black people, no matter what the scale, is a positive thing. And now you start to see why her expressing her views might not be the sort of thing that YouTube is happy to have on their site.
If you guys have liked what you've seen so far, you are going to want to go to libertyhangout.tv where you can find more uncensored content. It's amazing. It's so juicy, we can't put it here on Facebook or YouTube.
And then you have it, too, in inverted commas, juicy, which is a euphemism for Nazi, to put on YouTube. I mean, YouTube has a terms of service policy, which means that hate speech is not allowed on YouTube. To read from the actual policy, hate speech is not allowed on YouTube. We remove content promoting violence or hatred against individuals or groups based on any of the following attributes: age, caste, disability, ethnicity, gender identity or expression, nationality, race, immigration status, religion, sex/gender, sexual orientation, or victims of a major violent event and their kin and veteran status. And I would argue that this video already violates YouTube's terms of service, because it is promoting violence against individuals based on their race. It's not doing so directly, it's sort of namby-pambying around the subject. Because at the end of the day, Nazis like Kaitlin Bennett know that if they express their views publicly and confidently, without all these dog whistles and so on, most reasonable people who live in our society would not want them around.